prohibitive to get into climbing?
Yeah, you could get a pair of climbing shoes from $50 to $170 just about. And so think of ballet slippers, not quite that painful. You're not folding your toes, but then you have like performance rubber, so the type of rubber that you have on Indianapolis race cars, and so it's sticky, there's no cleat or tread on it. And then a harness is think of the seat belt that you have in your automobile, so that same grade of wetting. It's about 2.5 inches wide. It tests out to about 10,000 pounds. That goes over your waist, above your hips, and that's how you tie in with it. So the harness is about $40 to $60. Climbing rope will run you about $200, but you can kind of carpool together or share that with a friend as you get started. And then carabiners are they're about $5 a piece, and the belay device is $20. So there's certainly other sports that are more expensive, but once you purchase the equipment, you can use it for 2-3 years. The webbing and the sewn goods are all good for 3 years, and the hardware, as long as you don't notch it out, you can use it for 20 years. So.
And as you mentioned, with something like a rope, which is probably the largest expenditure, you can carpool, to use your terminology. I learned to climb from a woman who was maybe 120 pounds, and she was my belayer, but she tied off to a tree when we were top roping. So, I mean, you can really, weight does not matter.
Yeah, there's a lot of technique that you can use in it. And once you get into climbing, you'll kind of be like, wow, here's this community of people that are very supportive and very sharing of experience. They want to check out for you. Last thing you want is an accident at the cliff, so that everyone's like heads up and being aware along those there. And then once you get into it, especially if you live here in Montana, you're like, all of a sudden, you can go to Canada for limestone, you go to Canada for granite, you can go down to Wyoming for limestone, you can go to the Grand Tetons, and there's just Yosemite, you can go down to the Canyonlands and climb on sandstone, and you're opened up to so many other opportunities. So where we live here in Bozeman, in 6.5, 7 hours we can get out to Devil's Tower, which is a unique climbing experience, or you can go to City of Rock in Idaho, which is on granite. We can go to the Grand Tetons, go to Glacier. So, and each rock has its own peculiar nuances and flavor, requiring its own technique to climb.
Yeah, because I've climbed on limestone and I've climbed on granite, and they're definitely very different experiences.
Yeah. So.
Without giving away your secret climbing locations, where would you recommend somebody that has spent some time at the gym, knows the basics? Where are some good places in the valley to get out and top rope?
Yeah, probably the best top roping venue we have is at Practice Rock. So it's about 3 miles up Highlight Canyon off the turnoff from 19th, and just maybe a mile or so up from the fishing access gate. And be careful if you're going up there. There are top rope anchors, so those are bolts on the top of the climbs, and use your stuff, rig up your top rope, rappel down, and belay from the bottom. But you have to be careful accessing the top of them. And we did have a fatality there about 4 or 5 years ago, where someone wasn't roped in as they were getting to the top to rig up their setup, and then they fell off. So you have to, you can always be more cautious, and you can belay as you get to there, and then you pull through. So it's, but it is something that requires experience. You can go online, you can buy a book, you can learn about it, and you can check it out, but you're not going to really understand climbing until someone shows you what's going on with it.
Because the one thing I really miss from climbing, and I want to get back into it, is because climbing is the only activity I know that when I'm doing it, I'm completely focused on that, because my life's at stake, or a friend's life is at stake.
Yeah.
I mean, I went climbing on my wedding day because it was the only thing that kept me from thinking about getting married.
Well, yeah, you're in the moment, so you're not thinking about your utility bill when you're up there. You're thinking about, the climb and listening to the sounds of the rivers or the birds or the wind in the trees, and it's a great way to unwind after our oversubscribed, hectic, busy lifestyle that we all live.
Yeah, because you're not checking Facebook when you're on a rock.
Although there are a lot of selfies being taken and posted up to it.
No, I would never do that. I would not recommend that. It's 1450 KMMS, 1340 KPRK. Conrad Anker is in the studio. We're discussing climbing. And you, in no small part, are involved with, because Bozeman is home to a world-class climbing competition, the only one in North America.
That's correct. We have the World Cup ice climbing, which is dry tooling and then climbing on some features. And so we've had it now for 4 years, and we've had competitions for a while. So that takes place the second weekend of each December. So we have a ambitious goal of building a combination entertainment, venue, and climbing structure on the fairgrounds, repurposing shipping containers and then putting a facade over that and climbing up the facade. It's kind of a neat thing. So if any of you are out there in Radio Land and you have a spare $5 million, well, I'd like to have it named after you, just give us a call.
Well, but I'm sure even a $50 or a $5 donation would help you move you to that $5 million goal.
Yeah, we're in the Gallatin County Fairgrounds. The Fair Foundation is, you can donate there, and it's a tax exempt. But,
so that project, is it steadily moving forward, or is it just hovering right now?
We're hovering. I wouldn't. This is a great way of looking at it. But it's interesting. Steve White, one of our Gallatin County commissioners, he's one of the original members of the Dirty Socks Club, and those were these were the climbers back in the day, in the 60s and 70s, that pioneered all these routes here. So there's a real connection there. And so Steve is a climber, considers himself a climber, and he's been a real advocate. And we've been able to have approval for this improvement, this structure on the fairgrounds has passed the master plan. So but we're not going to go to the community and say we're going to increase your taxes for this. So it's trying to find out that, and it's patience. And I mean, the fairgrounds isn't going anywhere, and the idea is still there. So,
well, I didn't know that Steve was a climber. I'll have to bring that up because he's in here. Well, the commissioners are in here every Friday. So next time Steve's in here, I'll have to bring that up to him.
Steve, if you're out there listening, you do wear the Dirty Socks Club badge with honor, and that's to be a part of that at that time was kind of a neat thing. So that's what they called themselves, and I think they got together at Columbo's and had pizza and beer and planned the next adventure.
Yeah, because that's one thing I thoroughly enjoyed about the climbing community in Vermont is after a day of climbing, we'd all go to the bar and eat all kinds of food and have an adult beverage or two, because that's just the way it is.
Yeah, it's a nice way to connect with that.
Before we run completely out of time, I know that in Vermont and New Hampshire there was a big conversation about fixed protection, bolts in rocks, and the use of chalk. Do you have a strong opinion on fixed protection such as bolts and using chalk, because it does deface the rock?
It does. Climbing chalk is what gymnasts use, so it keeps your hands from sweating on there. And then fixed protection is when you drill a hole in the rock, so you're not using a crack. If you have a crack, you can put a stopper in there, and you can put protection that you take out, and it leaves it in the same way. So that's traditional climbing. And sport climbing is when you use this fixed protection. So depending on where you are in National Park Service land or Wilderness Study or BLM or Forest Service, there are rules that we need to follow. They're set by the land management agencies and also by peer pressure within the groups, and how do you open and establish a route. But a lot of those discussions they were sort of active in this. The chalk discussion was active in the 70s, the 80s, and early 90s. We kind of got through the bolting. How do we work with that? So now it's, you can go out to Mount Cowan and have a great adventure out there, or you can go out to one of our local Frog Rock, and that's limestone sport climbing that's made accessible with fixed protection. So everyone's like, yeah, there's no problem with that. But when you drive by Frog Rock on Interstate 90, it's not like you see bolts on the rock. You have to, they're kind of small, they're about an inch big, the hangers are. So there's there's probably greater things we should get our undies bunched up about than chalk and climbing bolts.
And finally, as someone of your stature, well, actually, I have two questions. If somebody is interested in getting involved in climbing, what's the best way for them to get into the sport? Just to reiterate and encapsulate.
Yeah, check in with a local climbing gym, Spire. There's also Montana Alpine Guides. That's a great way to do that. And then the high school has a kids climbing program. All the elementary and middle schools have bouldering walls, so the kids can get out there and stretch and pull on it. So if you're a parent, check in with that. So there's it's part of the gym curriculum, and it's a great way to it reaches children that might not be into traditional sports, I guess, or want to find another way to expend that energy that children have. And anytime we can get a kid away from a screen and to move their body, we're doing a good thing.
Conrad, our last conversation was regarding Denali. You have summited Denali. You have summited Everest multiple times. What's next?
I've done Everest, Vincent, and Denali, which are the three hard ones of the 7 summits. So everyone's like, "Are you going to do the 7 summits?" So I have a trip going to Kilimanjaro, and with the Mayo Clinic out of Minnesota, and our goal is to help this gentleman who's 85 to become the oldest person to summit Everest, not Everest, Kilimanjaro. So I think, yeah, that would be a real challenge. But yeah, so I'm kind of looking forward to that. But the next, hopefully get out climbing this afternoon.
Well, Conrad, as always, I appreciate your time. Thank you for sharing your insight. And as I said, I don't know anybody better to talk to about climbing than yourself. Thank you for your time.
Well, I don't know anyone better to talk to on Talk Radio.
Oh!
So, compliment for compliment.
Thank you very much. It's 1450 KMMS, 1340 KPRK. A brief commercial break. We'll catch up with our Fox News package. I'll see you on the other side.